Last few years, the field of tertiary education has been impacted by a growing number of external factors, the pandemic and its challenges, and dwindling state resources. The challenges introduced by these factors have presented challenges to the tertiary education sector, challenges that many universities have translated into exciting new paradigms in teaching and learning. But a gap still remains. Tonight, the Vice Chancellors of two of the leading public universities in Ghana are in the studio with us for a discussion on tertiary education in Ghana, specifically the changing tertiary educational landscape in Ghana's public universities. We encourage you to join in the discussion during the show by calling into our WhatsApp number 055-744-6429. With me for tonight's discussion are from my immediate left, Professor Bediko Fenhi Oko Amate, and my boss. He's the Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra. Professor Amate is also the Vice Chancellor, the current Chairman of Vice Chancellors Ghana. And on my far left is Professor Nana Bapia Amfo, who made history when she was appointed as the first female Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe I can start with you, Professor Amfo. For those of us who have been in tertiary education for a very long time, stability has been the staple. How education is delivered, course schedules, everything has been really on a track. And then the pandemic hit and everything went topsy-turvy. So I wanted to ask you if you could probably, before we begin the main discussion, just talk to us about one change that you think has had the greatest impact in recent years in tertiary education.
Well, thank you very much. And with particular reference to the pandemic, clearly one of the things that we have seen is the uptake of technology. It's the way that we have used technology in our teaching and learning processes, technology to manage our meetings, technology to drive our conferences. So really, there's one single thing that has driven the way we do things in the past 2 years. I would say it's technology.
Okay, so Professor Marty, what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree. Of course, it's a pandemic, but of course, as you mentioned, for close to 3 decades now, we've had stability in the tertiary education landscape. But of course, there are some changes that appeared as well that largely policy-driven. For example, the curriculum of the basic education that was reviewed, then of course the free SHS. Of course, because these were policy-driven, you could anticipate. But when it came to the pandemic, of course, nobody could anticipate. But our job is to adapt. As it is said, I mean, the only thing that is permanent is change itself. So change is really inevitable. So we need to take that into consideration. So yes, it's the pandemic. Okay. That's one major thing that we have to mention.
All right, so if I could go back to you, Professor Amfo, sorry. So if we're talking about the change and technology, what I was most interested in is academic continuity and how that has been managed. Because we got to a time in the pandemic where everything was shut down. And we are now at a point where everything is back to normal. How have universities caught up with our students? What is happening in that field? If you could shed some light for our listeners.
Yeah, I'm not sure that everything is back to normal. We're trying, but we are not exactly back to normal. And I don't think that we should anticipate that we will do things exactly the way we were doing in the pre-pandemic state. Otherwise, we wouldn't have learned anything through this pandemic, and that would be a shame indeed. So essentially, as you said, there was a time, I mean, March 2020, March, April, May, June, July, thereabout. There was a complete shutdown. I mean, we were all forced to go online, whether we were prepared or not. Of course, the level of preparedness varied. Resources varied across institutions. Even nationally, you know, internet services were not of equal strength across the country. Yet we managed through that process. Various universities made different arrangements, and we also took into cognizance our student who did not have, through no fault of theirs, did not have access either to internet services or to the appropriate gadgets. It just brought out the inequalities that we have in this country, the inequalities that we have at our universities, the different kinds of students that we have coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Now, yes, we have moved on several months and a few years now. In many of the universities, what you find now with regard to teaching and learning is that we are using the blended mode of teaching. So there's a combination for the face-to-face teaching and online teaching. Indeed, I was surprised myself to hear from my daughter, who is a second-year student at the University of Ghana, that yesterday she wrote her first paper to pen exam since she came to the university. I was surprised myself, that she'd gone through a whole year and more without having to do a paper to pen exam. Yet they managed through the process. So that tells you the resilience that universities really have. And as I said, we are now using the blended mode. We are taking advantage of that to increase access to our students. We have grown in numbers. If I take my university, for example, in 1997, there were just under, let's say, 7,000 students, and then 3,300 staff. 20 years on, 2017, 38,000 students, 6,000 staff. And then 2022, 61,000 students and a little over 6,000 staff. That tells you that we need to employ innovative ways because access has increased. We have a government that is implementing policies that has caused increased access at the basic and secondary levels, which is a good thing. But we also need to be prepared at the tertiary level, because beyond the secondary and the basic, the students then come to the tertiary level. What do we do? Our facilities have not increased that much. Our staff, unfortunately, have not increased that much. And so as we look at all of these areas, we use innovative ways, and I think that the pandemic has afforded us that opportunity to use the blended mode of teaching to increase access to students across the country.
Okay, so Professor Mate, Professor Ampo touched on increasing student numbers, which I know is also happening at UPSA, as well as dwindling state resources, which I know is happening across all institutional public universities. I mean, over the past 2 years, the government has relinquished some of the financial responsibilities back to the campuses. And actually, on March 24th, the press statement on the economy that was presented by the finance minister talked about additional measures, which included weaning of public tertiary institutions from government payroll and provide them with a fixed block amount or block grant instead. In what ways has the transfer of some of these financial responsibilities impacted the universities? What has been the effect?
Okay. So before I answer that, to add to what Naba just said, people don't realize that distance education didn't start with pandemic. As far back as 20 years ago, we had distance learning, except that it supplemented the in-person. In fact, way back, we had the correspondent courses where people would take courses abroad and all of that. I think what the pandemic did was the fact that it enhanced it. It allowed us to now go full hog. Then, of course, so now we offer mainly online teaching and learning and that kind of stuff. And so you mentioned government, the dwindling state resources. When Anaba spoke, she mentioned that 1997 University of Ghana was published 7,000. And I'm looking at the facilities of University of Ghana. Thankfully, I stayed 7 years at University of Ghana as a student. And I'm looking at a UPSA. I mean, compared to University of Ghana, we are just a tiny little university. And we speak now, in 2017, we were 11,500. And now we are over 20,000. So what it means is that now we are 3 times what Invest Ghana used to be in 1997. So it tells you the kind of pressure that we are facing as investing. Indeed, when before government introduced the free SHS program, we were asked to do some simulation to determine the maximum number we could have in our university. And at the time, it was agreed that UPSC should not go beyond 15,000 at full capacity and all of that. Here we are, beyond 20,000 and still counting. At the same time, infrastructure has remained the same. Now, you ask how government is shifting the responsibility to public investors. Okay, so let's say for a start that it's not just in Ghana, across the globe, you witness that trend. Even well-endowed countries are asking investors to bear more of the burden. But for Ghana, maybe because we are a less developed country, it's worse. But first, let's acknowledge that government pays the emoluments, the salaries of public investors, and for which, of course, we are grateful. They pay all the payroll allowances. They do pay the research, the book and research allowances. Then, of course, Get Fund is supposed to, and I choose my words carefully, they are supposed to help us advance some money for us for infrastructure. Of course, you know the pressure from the basic to free SHS. I mean, we know the numbers that we have now with free SHS, and therefore they still have to provide those facilities for the secondary school education, except that Get Fund was set up primarily for tertiary education. So the resources are not coming in. Now we have some assurances that we are going to get some more money. So
yes,
hopefully.
I think he said that they have received parliamentary approval
Yes,
to complete the programs.
I'm on the board, so
okay.
I was happy to hear that. So
okay.
I do hope that after this we can go for our checks. So we have that. So they do that as well. Again, sometimes you don't mention. Government also sponsors students, one way or the other. One, scholarships that they grant, and then two, the student loan scheme. So these are areas that government helps. But with that, we still have some areas that the investors are not bearing the burden more. One, of course, is infrastructure. If you go across the public investors, the campuses, you notice that littered all over the places are projects that were started. UPS, I can talk about 15-year project that we are still struggling to complete because it's Get Fund. I'm sure when you go to all the investors, you find that. So we would have to find money to upgrade the infrastructure and to expand, because otherwise the numbers we are getting from free SHS, you know, will contain them. The second one is, of course, recently we had the UTAC strike and then online teaching support, for which we've had to help government resolve the problem as well. Then, of course, because we are not able to get the desired numbers of faculty we need, it means that some of them would have to pay from your IGF and the contract staff. That's also a burden on us. And then in recent past, the water, electricity, and sewage also would have to be borne by the investors. So as we speak now, we are paying for electricity and water. I'm sure you heard on radio and watch on TV that they've come to our campuses and they've been disconnected. They would have to run around all over the place looking for money at the same time. So whilst they would have to bear these burdens, we've not been able to increase our fees. In fact, I know for UPSA, for 5 years running, we never increase fees. And I know a lot of investors also, they say, because you need to go to Parliament to seek approval. It was granted, but it came in late, and we couldn't go back to students and say, please bring the arrears. So we had to wait for the following year. But even if you consider the fact that what students pay now is less than $1,000 equivalent a year. If you compare to others, you are looking at UK, for example, where they are paying £9,000 a year. The same theories we are teaching, if it is a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the same thing we are teaching. Our faculty do educated us and all of that. And you need the same resources to offer quality education. We are not able to get it. We have to make do with what we have. So these are the pressures that we are facing because of the lack of resources.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that the the support from governments decreases everywhere. In fact, when I worked outside of Ghana, we used to call ourselves state supported when the state was paying about 70%, and we went to state assisted when the state was paying about 40%, and we went to state located because the state was paying like 20% or more or less. So definitely that is an issue.
It's a global trend.
Global trend, yes. So back to you, Professor Ampo. I wanted to talk about the skills that the students need today to be able to be successful in the workplace. Some say they have to learn, relearn, and unlearn skills. The teaching methodology has to change because they want people to be more creative thinkers, and they want them to have too much of the linear way of thinking. How do you balance what the workforce needs when you also have regulatory bodies that are very strict maybe on standards and what the expectations are?
Okay. Well, I think before then there was the question about the block grant to the universities, which hasn't been touched upon. I think that at VCG Ghana, we are generally receptive to the idea, but I see it as an expression of policy intent. And so it is something that we would have to, and of course, this is not the first time this has come up. It's something that has to be thought through carefully and the parameters clearly defined. There must be a scientific way of going about this. So how are we going to do this? Is it going to be a grant per student? And so if you have 20,000 students, are you going to get, 2,000 per student? Is it going to take care of humanities versus the sciences? So maybe you get 2,000 per humanities student, you get 2,500 per science student. And then also we have to consider that the different universities are at different stages of their growth and strength. So you may have younger universities, they may have just 500 students. If you're going to tie their block grants to the number of students, are they really going to be able to survive? So I think that this is something which needs critical discourse to happen around these, and then we develop these and see how we are going to roll these well-formed and articulated policies out. So for now, I mean, it remains a policy intent. Okay, so well, back to your question as to what skills the students of today need. Well, we're training students for the 21st century. And so what is it that they need? For me, irrespective of the discipline, I mean, we need to train students who can think, students who are critical thinkers, students who have adequate language skills, because whatever that you have, you need to be able to communicate these in an effective way. And we should not also forget our multilingual context. And so we need specific language skills. And of course, if you even want to reach out to the global, you cannot just rely on a single language. We need to train students who are technologically adept. I don't know what would happen to a graduate of today who doesn't know their way about on the computer. You know, it doesn't matter the field that you are going into. It doesn't matter if you are going out to seek employment or if you are going out to be an entrepreneur. These are skills that you need, and generally leadership skills, because when people have been to the university, the society holds them in high esteem. Wherever you find yourself, in your home, in your community, in your church, wherever it is, people look up to you for leadership. So these are the skills that we need to imbibe in our students. And these are the things that universities cannot do on their own. We need to partner with industry. Right. Sometimes you hear that, oh, the graduates of today, they are not fit for the world. It has to be a partnership. And so students come to the classroom, they get the theory, then they go out, during a specified period to have internships. It should even be possible for us to have people from industry coming to class certain times. So we have to do this together, so that by the end of their study period, 4 years, 3 years, whatever it is, they are ready to step out and make a significant contribution to the workforce and the world, the society generally.
Okay. So, Prof, I know what Professor Ampo said, it's great, but we have this huge issue in Ghana, this unemployment issue that looms, where we churn out these students who are ready to make a contribution, like you said, but there is nothing there. So when you talk about partnerships with industry, what types, and probably entrepreneurship, what types of ideas, strategies are the universities adopting to try and mitigate this, Professor Amate?
Okay. So as she brilliantly explained it, we'll answer the question. So to sum it up, it's about what we say, the head, the heart, and the hands. We train people, the attitude, their behavior, and of course knowledge. As she mentioned, there's been this debate all over that universities are not training people for industry and that they lack skills. So we are wondering, are you training a student for, say, one particular organization? Because you find even engineers working in the bank, and you find marketers working in the oil sector and all of that. So university education or university education is not for one particular sector. The idea is to train you to be able to think, creative thinking, analytical thinking, IT skills, social skills, emotional intelligence, then of course ethics and behavior. Those who cause financial loss to the state is not my grandmother in the village. It is those who have knowledge, very intelligent, and for which they use it to dupe the state. Therefore, ethical behavior is important. I think what we need now is skill-based approach to learning, not just the head knowledge and all of that. Of course, so like she mentioned, we need to blend this with industry coming in and out. We have tried to do so at UPSA. We are not there yet, but we are trying. That's why we have the professional programs. The idea is that, and I think that's what we should do in Ghana, that graduates should not leave the university thinking that somebody necessarily would have to employ them. You should leave with the confidence that I have enough skill to go out there, that if I'm going to sell watch, I can do it better than the one who didn't have university education. That if I set up a salon, a barber shop, because of the knowledge I've acquired, I can do it better. I can have the same kind of job that people do on the street. And because of the education I have, the knowledge I've acquired, the attitude I have, I can do it better. I think that's where we have come to. And we should not necessarily emphasize the fact that once you leave, a backlist or a stand back or a stand chart should employ you. I checked the statistics and I realized that we produce on average about 100,000 students leaving the universities and the technical universities and all tertiary sectors. Now, we are not able to absorb 10,000 a year. That means that you are having this excess load and it's piling up. That is disaster in waiting. So we must now reorient ourselves and decide that when we are training a student, we are training you to say, when you leave the four walls of the university or any tertiary institution, you have acquired enough confidence, ability, and skill that if you choose to sell bottled water, you can do it better than anybody else. And I think these are the things that we would have to do. But to do this also means that we have to train even the staff. We have to have a different mindset and orientation to say we should not just come and teach what is written in the textbook, what somebody wrote somewhere in the corner of China or US or Azerbaijan, but then looking at our context and decide that this is what we have. So if we study economics, we should study the economy of Ghana, the things that we study in the lecture hall. How do we apply to the economy of Medina or University of Ghana or Kintampo or who? These are some of the things that we must begin to look at. So we should have real life cases that we should now begin to solve. based on the things we are learning in class.
Case studies should be
Yes,
localized.
yes.
This is Talking Point. This is Talking Points on JBC. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm your host, Dr. Corey Onimwright, and we're coming to you live from the studios of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation in Accra. In the studio with me on my far left, Professor Nana Bapia Ampo. She's the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana. And my immediate left is Professor Abednego Fehiyoko Amate. He's the Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, and he's also the Chairman of Vice Chancellors Ghana. Before the break, for example, we're talking about unemployment issues in Ghana. You wanted to add to what Professor Amate said?
Yes. In addition to what Prof. Amate said, I wanted to mention that the burden of graduates getting jobs should not be for the universities only. You know, no matter what we do as universities, no matter the quality of training that we have for the students, if the economy is not expanding, I mean, there aren't just jobs for them. You know, the public sector employs a good number of people, but you know that over the years, you know, there have been constraints on employment in the public sector. And so there has to be that enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, so that they'll be able to absorb the graduates that we train. Because, I mean, let's face it, when you go to the workplaces, those working there, where were they trained? They were trained in the universities, see. And then we also have to generally expand our tertiary education space. And I believe that this should even start from the secondary and the basic level. Our education is simply just too academic. Right, we need to expand and give true meaning to vocational, you know, and technical education. Because look, you have people at the universities who have no business being at the universities, right? They would thrive so much in other spaces, vocational, technical. But I know that the government has started to pay more attention to vocational and technical education. We need to do that. The JHS concept was intended to cure that, but it hasn't worked so well. We need to go back there. Elsewhere, when people are going to the secondary level, they can choose to go to academic institutions, they can choose to go to vocational or technical institutions, and then they continue from there, and they fit into the workforce. They are duly rewarded for the work that they do. I mean, we all cannot be academics. The economy needs different skills to be able to thrive. So that's an area which we need to pay more attention to.
Okay. All right, so Professor Mate, piggybacking on what Professor Ampo said, let's talk about the disparities, because like she said, there are some students in the universities that probably may fare better if they went out elsewhere and if they tried a different path. So that suggests that there are disparities. in the levels of the students that are now being admitted, whether it is through the new free SHS or other means. So what kind of strategies or supports are the universities thinking about in terms of probably trying to bridge the gap, because they are with us? How are we going to nurse them through? I mean, recently the Minister of Education famously said that, you know, if you are a top-tier university, senior high school, you should be able to take a non-performing student and, you know, transform them into somebody who is exceptional. So I'm sure that same logic may apply for some of the universities. How are you going to transform these?
I was going to actually mention that the minister said the reason why you'd have to go to a top-tier SHS is because they can transform you. So it doesn't matter the grades that you got. So for him, the issue of garbage in, garbage out doesn't apply. Yes, so to that extent applies to the universities. Of course, the way we run the universities, you are supposed to have the normal lecture tutorial sections, tutorial sessions for the students, those who are not up to scratch. You won't provide some other avenues for them to catch up. So there are small working groups. They have their usually assigned course leads, coordinators, HODs, faculty officers, and the idea is that students are supposed to contact them. You have counseling centers. You have all kinds of people who are supposed to help the students to catch up. So the university system provides enough avenues for students to contact or to engage someone to help them when they are lagging behind. Largely, that's what is done. But to emphasize the point that it's good that we are paying attention to TVET now. And I do recall when we started BHS, like she mentioned, you found littered all over the place. We're supposed to be workshops. Who are supposed to be good masons, carpenters, and of course, then they'll make good money. I don't know what happened. Within a decade, everything came down. In the SHS, it was still academic. And so it comes back to the point that, yes, the universities will do their best to allow students to catch up and all of that. But it's important to pay attention to TVET so that others can actually branch to those areas.
Okay, so for example, let's talk a little bit about the challenges also that the pandemic brought in terms of mental health issues for our students. Not necessarily our students, this was everywhere, where there were concerns from battered women organizations, from mental health officials about how the pandemic insulated so many people that they weren't able to function like they did in the past. So here we have students who have all come from all sorts of backgrounds with us. And the university campus almost becomes their home away from home while they're there. What kind of support? We mentioned the academic disparities and how we support that. What kind of support do we have institutionally? Maybe I shouldn't use the word institutionally, but academically on our campuses for those who have mental health challenges, and how are we able to support people with learning disabilities? These are things that are not very popular on our campuses. How are we paying attention to that to really bring some of these students along?
Right, thank you. Just before I touch on that, let me say that there are real inequalities in this country, and when we talk about different kinds of skills and different kinds of interest areas, it doesn't necessarily correspond to aggregate. So, for instance, somebody who got aggregate 7 or aggregate 9 is necessarily academic as compared to somebody who got aggregate 20. And as Prof. Amate said, the universities have systems to support these. For example, at the University of Ghana, we admit students from less endowed schools. So I'm sure the minister will be very happy to hear this. And recently at our academic award ceremony, there was a student who was admitted under this program with aggregate 24. I think he came from Ketekrachi Secondary Technical or so, aggregate 24. And guess what? This student graduated with a CGPA of 3.69. So first class right there, you know. If we didn't have the policy that we had, he wouldn't have gotten into the university. So the fact that he had an Agri 24 doesn't necessarily mean that he is not academically fit for the university. And as Prof said, we have all kinds of systems, particularly the tutorial system, to take care of different learners. Yes, we do also have our careers and counseling centers where we have psychologists who are supposed to support our students, in fact, not just our students, but the whole university community with mental health issues. At the University of Ghana, for instance, we are working on our mental health policy because we recognize that mental health has become a central issue which we need to pay attention as a university. We also develop a system where we have a questionnaire for incoming students who will fill these, and that allows us to pick up certain things early so that we provide them with the needed support, either through the whole tutorial system or through the departments, or even through the careers and counseling center. The issue really is that we are under-resourced, you know, with a huge number of students. Sometimes we are not able to reach out to all of these things, but the systems are in place, and as we get increased resources, we also improve upon these facilities and avenues for our students and even our staff and faculty.
Okay, so Professor Matthew, I know Professor Amfo mentioned the student who came with aggregate 20, but is now graduating with 3.6. We had this case in UPSA where a student was actually a brilliant student. I don't know if you want to share that story, but couldn't get support to go to university.
So I so happened to be listening to one of the radio stations when this gentleman the father is a good header and he couldn't get support, so the university offered him a scholarship to come to UPSA. He ended up with 3.8 something above first class, brilliant student. We've had a lot of those cases where these students come in with aggregate 20, 21, based on the policy, and by the time they finish in 4 years, they've chartered. Indeed, the last, just this year, Deloitte, their graduate training program for undergraduate students, in terms of those they interviewed, 4 of them came from UPSA. The best ICAG student also finished UPSA, the best. And meanwhile, when you look at their background, you realize that they are not coming from Pemper College or Wesley Girls, or to say, or Every Girls. These are the and so yes. As Nava mentioned, you notice that aggregate 6 does not necessarily translate into first class, because now they have opportunity and within the same setting, same context. So the opportunities out there, and if the students are given the chance, and I say education is a leveler, and it allows everybody to, the poor and the rich, they all have the same education, and therefore they're able to make it. So I think that we should make more, we should invest in education more. If there is something that this country should look at, we should invest in education. Because it is, in fact, even for a family planning, education is the answer. The more you keep, especially the girl child in school, the less likely they are going to have teenage pregnancy. And poverty, the best way to cure poverty is through education. Because once you produce a graduate, you can be sure that he can take care of his immediate family. So we should invest more in education.
Okay, Samfo, during your induction ceremony, one of the focus areas you mentioned was bringing innovation into research, teaching, and learning. Why do you see this as a key focus for the universities now?
Yes, because that's what universities are about. Yes, universities, there's supposed to be innovation at universities. when students come to the universities, their minds are supposed to be open, and they should operate in an environment where they can be allowed to think and do whatever it is that they imagine. So I think that it is critical for us to have these at our universities to be able to produce the kinds of graduates that we are expecting to make an impact in today's world. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, and especially also thanks to the pandemic, we've all come to realize the need for digitalization. It is something that the Vice President is championing. Yes, and I think it was just about 4 weeks ago that at the University of Ghana also we launched the VC's program for enhancing the UG student experience through digitalization. And what we are seeking to do is not only going to help students, but our staff and faculty as well. And that's what we need in today's world to be able to operate efficiently and effectively.
So, Prof, I wanted to use that as a segue into quality and maintaining standards when we have all these disparities that we've talked about. So UG, UPSA, both institutions have a reputation and a quality that you both want to maintain. So in light of all these disparities out there that we discussed, how do you actually end up maintaining that quality and even going beyond? Because it's not a race, but it's certainly a sign that you are growing and becoming better with each passing year.
Okay, so first thing, we have to realize that all universities are supposed to be accredited by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, and therefore all programs are accredited by them. The idea is to maintain the standards. That's the first thing. The second thing is that now we are doing a lot of online teaching and learning. We have had to redesign the programs and to ensure that it meets the standards, the quality standards that we require. The number three thing is that we have had to retrain not just students but faculty as well in terms of how to do online learning, teaching and learning. It's not the same thing. It's not a matter of taking PowerPoints and then just place it there and then expect people to go and read. It's a different ballgame altogether. So the way to teach, to do online teaching and learning is very different. So we've had to do a lot of training. Then, of course, you have to set up a support system made up of faculty, administrators, and technical people to offer the needed help, especially if you have some old lecturers who are BBC and then before computers. You realize that you have to offer this kind of training. So it's a continuous thing. And more important, we have the quality assurance directorate, and I'm sure universities have. What gets measured gets managed. So you'd have to be, the control measures in place, ensuring that all of these things are kept. So the point is that it was mentioned earlier, the online teaching and learning has come to stay, like it or not. Because if you look at the system, from application, you still have to have some technology, admission technology, registration technology, teaching and learning technology, assessment technology, graduation. Graduation is even. So you see them wearing their gowns and they are watching and waving, and all of that. So it's now part of us.
They want in person.
They want in person, exactly. It's funny when we started this online teaching and learning. They oppose it. They shouted to the rooftop. Wow. No, and now they are the ones who are calling for online teaching and learning. So each step of the way, you got to monitor to ensure that you don't compromise quality. It's just because it's online doesn't mean that we should sacrifice quality. So yes, all these measures are in place. But let's say we still have to continue to monitor and keep on improving. I think when you mentioned the issue about gender inequalities, you also realize that some do not have access to data, some the network is bad and all of that. Hopefully the free Wi-Fi that government is seeking to do, hopefully we should get some data. Again, with the telecom companies, for example, the zero-rated yes, that they were given to educational institutions should also continue, because, like it or not, that is where we are, and so data will play a key role in ensuring that we keep quality.
Okay. I want to come back to data. I want to give you a chance to talk about the quality.
Well, it calls for more investment in the area of information communication technology. We need to invest to get the right facilities, the right gadgets, to get internet connectivity on our campuses being top-notch. We cannot control what happens elsewhere. That one, we leave it to government, and we appeal to government to improve access all over the country. But within our campuses, we need to invest. We also need to, as Prof mentioned, to train and retrain. At the University of Ghana, we were lucky to have established just before the pandemic a Center for Teaching, Learning and Innovation. And so this center is helping with training, faculty retraining, faculty teaching assistants, and also students for us to be able to effectively use the new systems. We also have to invest in proctoring software for us to continue to have credible exams, because sometimes the students, they like the online exams because of the things that they can do. But when we have the proctoring software in place, then you can remotely invigilate examinations. It doesn't matter where they are, and they are writing the exams online. You are able to invigilate these. And then we all have to, beyond what the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission is requiring, we all have to have our online teaching and learning policies that will guide our operations. And as Prof said, our quality assurance units also monitoring what we do on a day-to-day basis, because we're really not going to go back face-to-face full swing. So we have to make this work for ourselves.
Okay. I'm going to take some questions and comments from the viewers. The first one, Professor Nanaba Amfo is a great professor and a lecturer UG has ever had. In fact, she taught me in 2001 and 2002, where I graduated with a first class CGPA of 3.74. I am not surprised she's not the Vice Chancellor of the This is from Kwesi Brady. And then, please, can you kindly ask how friendly the UPSA policy has been to pregnant mothers and nursing mothers? So that's for you, Prof.
I expected that, of course. We try, but we are going to set up. In fact, now in the next few weeks, we should have the wellness center. When you mentioned the issue of the mental health issue, the wellness center are fully furnished to attend to students who have those issues. Then again, we are setting up a facility for nursing mothers and pregnant mothers as well, so that when they come to school and they need to attend to their kids, they should be able to use that facility. Yes.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. I'm a student of University of Education, Winneba. I would want to ask a question. Please, is it right that a school will hold all student results from level 100 to level 400 and feel reluctant to publish it in their portals? And if not, what can we do as students? Because we have done everything as students and have gone through all necessary channels, but the management doesn't want to listen. Thank
you. It's a difficult question to answer. Because we don't know the full facts. It will be good to know what the university would have to say about this, because why would the university want to
withhold?
Yes, why would they want to do that? The university wants students to actually graduate as soon as possible. Now students don't realize, when they are happy, we are happy. Because then there's no confusion, there's no problem. So I would advise that they should engage the university authorities more to find out reasons behind this. Then it will be easier to find solutions. Yes.
Okay. So
because this is definitely an unusual situation.
Yes.
So, for example, let me have you take this. How do you deal with students who do not do well, and yet, and yet need help? I can't read what the person has written well.
Yet students
who do not do well. And yet don't come for help.
Well, that's a difficult one, especially when you are dealing with large class sizes. If you have smaller class sizes, then you as the lecturer, you as the tutor, you are able to quite easily identify these. But if you have large class sizes, then sometimes it is difficult to identify these early. But what this means is that we have to try to grade our assignments, our exams on time, and then declare our results. Because if we are able to have our examination boards sitting as they should every year, then we are able to pick up the struggling students and then pay attention to them.
Okay, so this is a lot of questions, so both of you can tackle them. One, this is from Kufia Pia at Ahafo. Prof, is it worth sending your child to a vocational or technical school that doesn't have all the necessary learning and teaching materials? And as a third world country, we will always have challenges. Will we always have challenges with our economy? And if yes, then why are universities churning out a lot of graduates? And then the final one is from the same person. Should universities be completely independent? So you can take one, she can take a couple.
Well, I mean, technical and vocational institutions have to be equipped, right? They are not supposed to be theoretical. They're supposed to be hands-on, and so the necessary equipments are required. And I did mention that I know that the government in recent times, the Ministry of Education, is paying attention to technical and vocational education. So I believe that they are on course to equip these institutions, provide them with the right tutors, the appropriate learning environment, so that by the time that they are coming out, because it's not supposed to be academic, and so you need all of these resources in place.
Okay, the one about churning out a lot of graduates.
So the flip side is what if you don't have university graduates? Because all the people who are working that we admire, 99% of them have university education. So I guess, as Prof. Said earlier, it's about opening up the economy so you can absorb them. It's not to shrink. Yeah. It's rather to open up the economy.
And creating an enabling environment for the private.
And the issue about it's always better to have an educated populace. Yes. It helps with everything. I mean, public health, education. If you have an educated mother, the mother is more likely to understand why the child has to be breastfed for a certain period. I mean, you are more likely to have a healthier child from an educated mother, and so on and so forth. Because I mean, I don't know what other option that we are looking for. Nelson Mandela said that education is the worst weapon to use to change the world. Yeah. So yes, I will always go for a more educated population.
I think the challenge is that people have unfortunately associated education with universities rather than the tertiary, vocational, everything else, because education is so broad that to just narrow it down and say my child has to go to education, university, and then expect to be absorbed into the system afterwards. But there are so many other opportunities in the other areas that are lacking and need the education to be able to elevate the masons, the carpenters, all these other people who work every single day and contribute to the national development.
And the Germans have done it so well. In fact, there was a case in UK we witnessed where the gentleman was coming to repair something at home, and he came in a very posh car that if you are investing lecture, you'll not be able to buy.
Of course.
There's a question about independence. I want to believe there's financial independence.
Yes.
Even the advanced countries would have to support. The idea is that because it's considered as a public good, because otherwise then you'll not be able to pay the fees. So it's a public good. So that's why the state would always want to intervene with some resources so that it can be affordable.
Okay, so this is for both. Is there any advice for how a person with a disability can inquire about services from either UG or UPSA before they buy the phones, for example?
Oh, yes. So we have an office for students with special needs. And so they can check online and find phone numbers to call for information. But when you are filling the forms, we ask for that information. So make sure that you fill the form and provide the accurate information. And so we treat those applicants differently during the process and ensure that we provide them with the support so from pre-application through the process till they enroll. So, I mean, one of our strategic priorities is gender and diversity, our fourth strategic priority, and so we seek to provide support for students with disability.
Yeah, like the same. So yeah, so you go on our website and you can call, and of course when you are filling the forms, it will ask you questions as to if you have any special needs.
Okay. So this is a comment from Haruna Dumakuru Sunyani. Most of the universities in our country lack proper orientation for students because students do programs that they have no idea about and where they will end after studies. We need to do more education to us incoming students on what the university education is about. Good evening, I'm Asari. Pardon me if my issue was not table for discussion. I just want to know whether it is right for an institution in Ghana to change the year a student successfully completed his or her degree, or because the student could not make full payment of fees. For instance, I knew this. For instance, a 2020 graduate who still owes some fees will be given a 2022 certificate because the arrears of fees were settled in 2022. I really need guidance on how to handle this. So
the first question about the orientation, these days the universities do something. They go to the various regions and schools, for which they engage the final year students. These are some of the issues that they seek to discuss. So I advise that all final year students in the senior high schools, they should make sure that when the universities come, they should attend those programs and ask the questions about the programs. It's not because you had 6 A's, therefore you should go and do medicine. It doesn't. It's not the best way to select a program. So I advise that when the university visits the various schools, the various candidates should participate and ask those relevant questions.
Unfortunately, we ran out of time. So I'm going to ask for your final thoughts that you want to share on the matter. So I'll start with you, Prof.
Yeah, so education is so critical, and I would like to quote Nelson Mandela again and say that it's the greatest weapon that you can use to change the world. And so as a nation, we should, if there is one single sector that we ought to invest in, that is the education sector, and that would bring a remarkable change in our society.
Okay, so on that same point, and so maybe I should personalize that a bit. I'm sure my uncle is watching because he brought me up. Just imagine if he didn't pay the fees, where I would be by this time. So I advise parents. Uncle Zoo, I know you are watching, so so I advise parents, no matter what it takes, send your child to school. And unfortunately, we have free SHS. So whatever you do, send your child to school. Please don't buy several materials to attend funerals when you could just spend a little bit of it to send your child to school. Very soon, that same child will come out and take good care of you.
Thank you so much for joining us on tonight's Talking Point. It's been an interesting discussion. I want to extend a special thank you to my distinguished guests in the studio with me. On my immediate left, Professor Abednego Fairhi Oko Amate, Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, and as I mentioned at the beginning, my boss, and he's also the chairman of the Vice Chancellor's Ghana. And on my far left is Professor Nanaba Apia Ampo. She's a Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana. I'm Dr. Enim Rice, and this has been Talking Points. Thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with us. As always, good night, good luck, and please be and stay safe. Till next week.